Happy holidays, Penn State football fans. Bob Flounders here with Johnny McGonigal. Early Monday afternoon. As you all know, James Franklin now holds his Tuesday pressers on Monday. We just heard from Penn State's coach, and I know a lot of people are interested if they haven't already heard. We're going to get into what the deal is at quarterback this week for Penn State's Friday night game at Ford Field against a struggling Michigan State team. We got a lot to get to today, Johnny. It's a short week, travel week. I know you've been to Ford Field before for an epic college football game. I'm not quite sure, but I'm pretty sure you're going to be making multiple appearances at Ford Field this week. You can get into that if you'd like. I'm super pumped for you, but glad to have you here, and we can get into the quarterbacks. But first, you know your way around Ford Field, do you not?
Bob, I'm a Ford Field aficionado. I know my way around Detroit's finest indoor football stadium. Now, I was out there for the 2019 Quick Lane Bowl, a bowl everyone remembers as an instant classic.
Yeah.
Between Pitt and Eastern Michigan when I was working for the Post-Gazette a few years ago. I love flying out to Detroit on the night of Christmas for a December 26th bowl game. It was magical. And yeah, you mentioned it. Me, Audrey Snyder from The Athletic, Daniel Gallen, formerly of PennLive, now 24/7. Both of those writers, they're both Packers fans. And so me, those two, and John Sauber from the CDT are going out early. We're flying out Wednesday or driving out Wednesday for John and Audrey, I think, Daniel, and going to the Lions-Packers game on Thanksgiving. And then we'll be back Friday night for Penn State, Michigan State. So just can't get enough of Detroit in the holiday season. We figured if we were going to miss Thanksgiving flying out the day before the game, we might as well, go out 2 days before the game and just watch some football. And maybe Sean Clifford will make his NFL debut if Jordan Love gets hurt or really isn't playing well. We'll see. We'll see.
Johnny, I have it on pretty good authority, and I think the authority might have been you in the press box over the weekend. That fun fact, if there's any Penn State fans that are going out early and maybe want to go to that game, I have it on good authority that the beer prices might be the cheapest in the NFL, and you may or may not be pretty pumped about it.
Yeah, may or may not be. Yeah, cannot confirm. Yeah. Sources close to the situation, though, indicate that I'm pretty happy about it. The actual price of the ticket, not so much, because the Lions are pretty good, and I know Thanksgiving football is a big deal in Detroit. But the beer prices will certainly help.
All right. I have a funny feeling if I do run into you, then I'm flying out Thursday, I think mid-afternoon. If I do by some chance, I'm sure I'll see you at some point. I'm hoping you have a nice big smile on your face, and there's a chance you might.
I'll be betting David Montgomery anytime touchdown, Bob, and I will be very happy.
All right. Let's pivot now to what the fans want to know. All right, so Drew Aller, right? He looked like he was in a lot of pain on the sideline after leaving the Rutgers game early in the third quarter. Looked like he was kind of trying to get his right arm, shoulder, upper arm loose. He was in the injury tent for a while, Johnny, but it looked like as the game went on, you could tell he was not going to go back in the game, and Bo Perola took over and did a really nice job. It just it seemed like he wasn't as uncomfortable the longer the game progressed. Did you get that read, number one? And we have an update on whether or not Drew is going to play against Michigan State.
Yeah, I thought Bo handled himself well. Coming in, rushing 8 times for 71 yards. His first play after taking over for Drew was that 39-yarder that kind of brought the crowd to life, and right down the Penn State sideline, and he ends up scoring a touchdown late in the game. It's a very important touchdown. To some, Bob.
That's 3 times I think he secured the cover for Penn State's fan base. I believe it's 3.
Yeah, every Penn State bettor loves Bo Perola for just taking care of their wallets, taking care of them. But no, I mean, like from a football sense, he did look good. Now he only threw the ball once, one completion for 9 yards. But on the ground, he was as effective and as fast and as powerful as you would expect, and what we've seen, in garbage time this year. So
Yeah.
I thought Bo handled himself well. And talking to him after the game, he said that he was ready for a moment like that. He always prepares like he's a starter. He was that way last year when he was the fourth stringer behind Clifford, Vayu, and Aller. And so he's been waiting for a moment like that. You never want to see, a guy like Drew go down, but when opportunity presents itself, you take it. And I thought Bo did. And so I thought he played pretty well. The update on Drew, though, is that James Franklin expects him to play this weekend, this Friday night at Ford Field against Michigan State. James said that, it's early, but all indications would suggest that the quarterback position, everything will be normal and all systems go against the Spartans. And so he does expect both quarterbacks to still have a role, still expect Bo Perola, I think, to get into the game. And like he did early against Rutgers, because he got in, before Drew went down. He was in there for the Perola package. And so I would expect to see that again. But this is also, assuming Aller looks right and feels right, before the game and during the game after sustaining that hit against Rutgers. It looked like he was like his right shoulder area, Bob. He was trying to, extend and stretch a little bit, and couldn't come back into the game after spending some time in the medical tent. But this is, I think, a good opportunity for Drew against a bad Michigan State secondary. They rank, I think, 92nd or 93rd in the FBS in pass efficiency allowed. So whichever quarterback is in on Friday night, I think we'll have, not an easy time, because we've talked about Penn State's wide receivers, but an opportunity to get right.
Yeah. Bo did play great. And, he only attempted that one pass, but, and the Penn State fans obviously are thrilled with Bo. The backup quarterback, always the most popular guy on the team. If the production is a little bit spotty from time to time from the starter, backup guy's always going to be kind of beloved. And he has produced 3 late covers for Penn State bettors. We can't overlook that. But I do think, though, Penn State fans have good memories, Johnny. They don't want, when they do see Bo, they don't want him to be what Will Levis was in 2019 when he backed up Sean Clifford. And Sean Clifford got hurt late in the season, and he actually had to leave the Ohio State loss. Will actually started against Rutgers in a game that was 27-6 in that one as well. And, during the COVID year when he was kind of a design almost like a, he was just in the game to run. Penn State fans want to see him throw. It's not always that easy, though, because with the RPOs, Bo is so good at running. If the opportunity presents itself, he's going to take off, and more often than not, he's going to make a play with his legs. So it'll be easy. I wanted to ask you, it'll be fun to see what they do. It'll be interesting to see if Drew starts. And Johnny, if he does start, I mean, it's only going to have been 6 days since he took that shot. You just wonder what the game plan is going to look like. Drew has, as the season has progressed, they've had more design runs for him. I don't know if that'll go out the window, but it could look a little bit different if Drew is the quarterback.
Yeah, it could. And you mentioned it being on a short week. I think that does play a factor. You're playing on Friday night as opposed to Saturday afternoon or Saturday night. So, yeah, definitely. I would be surprised if you see another quarterback designed run for Drew Aller this season. Now, look, those have worked to some degree, especially over the last few weeks. We saw the run that Drew had for a touchdown against Michigan. He picked up 8 yards and I think a first down before getting hit against Rutgers by, I believe it was Flip Dixon, the safety for Rutgers, came down and laid a shot on him. And I think from at least the way James Franklin explained it post game, that Flip kind of came from behind another player. Like, I don't think Drew saw him, because otherwise he would have gotten down and slid and made sure he didn't take that shot. So in an ideal world, you don't have your, regardless of how you think you may or may not be playing this year, your 5-star quarterback, your starting quarterback, you would rather not him take those kind of hits. And so I would be surprised if they go back to that with him, unless he really is just feeling fine and it was really precautionary against Rutgers. But that was still a 10-6 game at the time. I'm sure Penn State felt comfortable with Bo being in there and closing out that game. But it's not like they were winning 35-0 and Drew got hurt. And then they said, okay, like totally precautionary and whatever. So we'll see. But I would expect Drew to start. If he's going to play, I would expect him to start. And I would still expect Bo to get in there. And I think this game on Friday and then the bowl prep, of 15 practices they get, I think, before whatever bowl game they would play in, I think, goes a long way with these guys, even if they don't have their coordinator in place with Mike Yurcich being fired and, Ty Howell and Jaywan Sider sharing offensive coordinator duties for the time being until James Franklin makes that hire.
Yeah, I think, a perfect world, I think, for Penn State, James Franklin and the two quarterbacks. Drew starts, has some success. Michigan State turns into Michigan State. Penn State's able to build a comfortable lead at some point into the third quarter, maybe midway through. They let Bo play. He gets to throw a couple of passes. I think that would be a nice Thanksgiving weekend gift for the fan base because they want to see more of Bo, but also I think it's very important. If Drew's going to play, he needs to have a little bit of a confidence builder, going into the bowl prep. Drew, Bo has done great, right? But the fans just need to know, when you have to deal with Ohio State's defense and Michigan's defense, like Drew did, it's going to impact your performance. They're two elite. They're two elite defenses, two elite teams, and it's just the numbers are going to be impacted. Hopefully they can both can have a good showing against a Michigan State team, that they're just kind of struggling. It's been an awful year for Michigan State. Mel Tucker got fired. They've had a bunch of injuries. I know they beat Indiana, but they had some injuries in that game. Penn State, Johnny, is favored by 20. Before we talk about that, I just wanted to ask you, because I did think there was something to it. James kind of tried to play it down. James went out of his way to really kind of salute the co-offensive coordinators, Jaywan Sider and Ty Howell. But he kind of drops these hints, and you just don't know how to interpret them. He said they only had one missed assignment, and he said, that the game plan was kind of smaller, maybe more precise. They were able to get stuff to everyone a lot quicker. Was it a coincidence that Mike Yurcich did all of that, or tried to do all of that in the first 10 games? And I never heard James really say anything to that effect when Mike was the OC, even last year. So I was just curious. He said, Audrey asked him about it, and he said, he doesn't ever want to be divisive. He's always respectful of, everyone's feelings. But I don't know. I kind of was the same as Audrey. I was wondering if there was, if there's smoke, there's fire there.
Yeah. Like, you want to be respectful of everyone and you don't want to be divisive. And yet after the Michigan game, when you're asked about Drew, you go ahead and say, yeah, I thought we could have been better play calling and getting our quarterback into rhythm. And then you fire the guy the next day. Yeah. So, I don't know. It seems like a little bit mixed signals, messaging. And obviously James is not going to come out and say, yeah, that guy was terrible. But you can read between the lines. You can we've covered James Franklin for quite a while now, Bob. You can pick up what he's putting down. And
so can the fans.
And so can the fans. They're plenty familiar with his press conferences and comments and quotes and everything else too. So, look, Mike Yurcich is no longer the offensive coordinator at Penn State, and James is tasked with finding his replacement. And until then, it's going to be Jaywan and Ty, two guys who James has said now on multiple occasions are loyal to Penn State. And he said, I believe last week, he said that what you're going to get from them, which again, I think is read between the lines. Maybe he didn't know what he was going to get from Mike Yurcich at times. He said that pretty plainly, I think, at one point. So yeah, this is a team now that is, I think they'll look pretty similar against Michigan State. They're going to lean on Katron Allen. They're going to lean on Nick Singleton.
Yeah.
I thought Tyler Warren and Theo Johnson would get a little bit more targets against Rutgers than they did. Tyler had that really nice catch over the middle, 23-yarder, I believe. That was his season long. He's been reliable in the red zone this year. So, yeah, if Drew is going to be throwing the ball a little bit more against Michigan State defense that really cannot defend the pass at all, ranks pretty low, not only in the Big Ten, but in the FBS. look for those guys to be involved more, especially if Harrison Wallace remains out, which he was against Rutgers.
Yeah. Johnny, we're wrapping up. We're not wrapping it up, but it's the Blue-White Breakdown, the final regular season game for James Franklin's Nittany Lions. I know you are hot on the trail of Penn State's potential bowl destinations. They still got to win a game, though. They're expected to win, and there's going to be some other results that will factor into, I think, where Penn State actually ends up. But I wanted to get to two more things Penn State related on this podcast. In your opinion, do you think secretly Keandre Lambert-Smith is in some kind of witness protection program? That's number one. And number two, we have to get into, I'm gonna term it curious. James's curious answer to your question, which was a good one. You know, what's happened really? You know, Nick Singleton, 1,000-yard rusher as a true freshman. Plenty of explosive runs, the Rose Bowl run, the epic Rose Bowl run. The guy was just lethal if he got the slightest bit of room. You know, this year has not been 2022. The numbers are nowhere near where I think a lot of people expected them to be. And I think you asked Johnny, you asked James, I'm paraphrasing, but how do you think Nick is kind of handling the fact this year compared to last year? And I could have expected just about anything from James because he's a master at kind of maybe deflecting and diverting things away. But I did not see his answer to your question, how he did it. I did not see that coming.
No, I didn't either. First of all, Keandre Lambert-Smith, maybe not in the witness protection program, but certainly has not been, a featured part of this offense the last 2 weeks. And it's going to be interesting to see. He was one of many players with eligibility left that walked on senior day. And so it's going to be interesting to see if Keandre decides to come back for 2024, test the NFL waters, and hope that, his big play potential, it will intrigue a team. Maybe he transfers. There's a lot of guys in that territory of like, do I stay or do I go? And so interested to see what Keandre decides to do. With regards to Nick, I asked James, I said, look, Nick Singleton, he's had his moments this year, but hasn't had the type of season that many thought he would after what he did as a freshman, which was, I thought, establish himself as one of the best running backs in college football, certainly one of the most explosive with those 40, 50-yard runs that he seemingly pulled off every week, ending the year in the Rose Bowl. Like the way that he performed last year, I thought was really promising. And this year hasn't been the case from a running the ball standpoint. I mean, I even go back to Saturday against Rutgers. There was a play where he had a wide open hole if he kind of just looked left and shimmied left, and he decided to just kind of burrow his head down, and it was a goal to go run, and he didn't get in. I think he's missed some holes. He hasn't looked. He hasn't had the same pop, the same juice. Maybe he put on some pounds, and that's why. But anyway, I asked James, how has he kind of handled this year from a week-to-week standpoint, practice, everything. And James said, like, I understand the question and I get it, and the stats are the stats, but at the same time, he said that he feels like Nick, they're going to go back and look at the film from this season and grade it better than he was in 2022. And he was mentioned the run blocking, the passing, like him in the passing game as a receiver. He's had a few, I remember a few catches. I think it was 4 or 5 at Northwestern, Bob. But it's not like he's out there, catching wheel routes like Saquon was and taking them 50 yards. So, I don't want to flat out disagree with an answer that James gave. But at the same time, there's a little spin there, right? Like you don't want to publicly say like, yeah, Nick hasn't had a good year. Like that's not what James is going to do, and that's not what the question was intended to get from him either. But yeah, it was interesting that's the way he went about it, and just said that he thought that Nick is having a good year. And I think if you look at the stats, that certainly doesn't suggest it. And I think from an eye test standpoint, us up in the press box, we've seen him miss some holes. It doesn't seem like he's looked right this year. Certainly not the same explosive runner that he was last year. So I'm interested to go back and rewatch all the games at the end of the year, like I do.
Yeah.
I'm not being paid millions of dollars like James Franklin is to assess his players and run his program. So, he's entitled to answer the question however he wants.
Yeah, and that was certainly a unique answer. And like you said, James is a big picture guy. He knows that and it's not just the players. It's the parents. Everyone is listening when he is asked a question. So I don't know if I'd call it diplomatic. I don't know what I would call that, but I do know that to me, and there's 2 games left, but I'm pretty sure my main takeaway from the Penn State 2023 season, 2 takeaways: the lack of explosive plays, not just from Nick Singleton, but from everyone. I mean, Johnny, if you would have told me after 11 games that the 2 longest rushes by Penn State backs, skill players, belonged to Tank Smith and Bo Perola, I would have bet. I don't know. I would have found a loan shark, and I'd be broke, and I'd probably have some. I'd have some busted kneecaps because I would have bet there's no way that is true. I think it's 39 and 34 yards are the long, but it's also the passing game. You know, Keandre Lambert-Smith, 72-yard catch and run score against West Virginia in like 95-degree heat. We're like, wow, maybe James is right all along. He was a true number 1 field stretcher. They finally got the guy. He's finally, stepping out into the spotlight. Last year's Rose Bowl performance wasn't a fluke, but it just has not come together. That's my one takeaway, and there's still time for the change. And also the way the defense has played consistently, and they just don't have anything to show for it when you look at how Penn State's offense performed against Ohio State and Michigan. To me, those are the things right now that stick out. But I did think the Nick Singleton answer was certainly unique, and I don't know if the tape is going to bear that out, but I salute James for his creative way of kind of answering what was a pretty, it was an honest question from you, just trying to seek some answers, get his input, but I just never thought he would go in that direction.
No, I didn't either. But, look, even amid all that, the lack of explosive plays, Nick and some guys on this team, it's not just him, right, that have not, maybe performed or at least put up the stats that they would have hoped this season. Penn State, they're still sitting here 9-2.
Yeah.
Obvious losses to Michigan and Ohio State, but an opportunity to go to 10-2 against Michigan State. Sure. And at that point, Bobby, you mentioned the bowl prospects earlier in the pod.
Yeah.
They're firmly in the New Year's Six category right now.
Yeah.
Whether that's it's going to be an at-large bid, most likely because the loser of Ohio State, Michigan, that won't go to the Big Ten title game. You would think that the loser of that game probably won't make the playoff, and that they would be slotted into the Orange Bowl. So for Penn State as an at-large, you've got the Fiesta Bowl out in Arizona, the Peach Bowl in Atlanta, and the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. And in terms of potential opponents, the Group of 5 slot looks like it's going to go to Tulane, but it might go to SMU, might go to UTSA has a chance. Like there's some teams in that mix still. And then, maybe Texas, maybe Alabama, if they don't make the playoff, would be intriguing opponents. Oregon and Washington also in the mix there. I'm not sure, Bob, if bowl execs are going to try to avoid that, where future Big Ten members going up against a Penn State,
right?
Especially maybe Washington, because Penn State and Washington are playing each other in 2024.
Right.
So that's just something to keep in mind as we look at all these bowl projections. And, certainly, plenty of people are, trying to plan their travel, and you won't be able to do that, officially until next Sunday when the bowls are announced after Conference Championship Saturday. But just, something to keep in mind, something to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Johnny, I don't think I'm being a rocket scientist here. I think we both expect Penn State to take care of business on Friday at Ford Field against a Michigan State team that's 4-7. They did just beat Indiana, but they are low on scholarship players. There's not. I don't know. I don't know that there's any elite talent, at least veteran talent that's left on that team. Tough year beginning with the Mel Tucker scandal, and they moved on from Mel. But I did want to say this. I do think it's important. I do think Penn State fans care. How do you see Ohio State, Michigan playing out in Ann Arbor on Saturday. What are you looking for? We both got good looks at both teams. Jim Harbaugh will not be on the sideline for that game. Ohio State certainly has gotten better, I think, as the year has progressed, but I think it's a fascinating game. Michigan's won the last two. Connor Stallions is not going to be a part, I think, of this game prep for Michigan this year, I'm pretty sure. How do you see it playing out? Just generally speaking, I don't know what the total is in this game, but I just feel pretty strongly it could go differently. But those two defenses, I think, are really going to dictate, who's going to win that game.
Bob, those costume glasses with the mustache? The Connor Stallions is going to be wearing one of those on Saturday during the game. No, I think Ohio State wins, and I know they're the betting underdog right now. I think it's 3.5, 4 points. I just think they have the best player of anyone in Marvin Harrison Jr. And JJ McCarthy hasn't really impressed me this year. Like, I know that he was getting some Heisman buzz before the Penn State game, and Michigan could lean on the run and Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum at Beaver Stadium, and they did that to great effect. But if you feel like you have a difference maker at quarterback, you would think you would want to kind of unleash him a bit. And they didn't use him pretty much at all in the second half against Penn State. I know he had that nice run on 3rd and long, but I think Ohio State's defense is vastly improved. I like what Jim Knowles has done with that unit a lot.
Yep.
The offensive line for Ohio State doesn't necessarily impress me. Yeah. But, when you have Marvin Harrison Jr., you can just run a drag route with that guy, a little shallow crosser. Like, just spam that 30 times, and he's going to make a big play. And I really think that this is going to be a big game for Marvin. And we talk about the Heisman, and a lot of times it's viewed as like a quarterback award. This could be a game where Marvin Harrison goes out and has 15 catches for 150 yards against a really good Michigan defense. Like, I think both defenses are really good. And I think it could be a lower scoring affair, but I think Marvin Harrison will be the difference, and Ohio State's going to win.
Yeah, I'm fascinated too. Not that they needed to. I think if you're Michigan's defensive coaches and there's one game tape you want to watch really closely to get ready for it's the Penn State Ohio State game. Yeah. And what Marvin was able to do when Penn State tried to play strength on strength. I thought a large part of that game, they have Penn State's got some really good corners, and it didn't matter. Kalen King had the bulk of the assignment, but I think Johnny Dixon saw some work too. It did not work if they didn't have help. It just did not work. He's too big, too fast. He catches just about everything in sight. So it's going to be a tough matchup. They're going to have to give whoever it is some help and to try and take him away.
Yeah, and one more thing too on Ohio State, I think TreVeyon Henderson is really rounding into form and playing really well. The running back after dealing with some injury issues earlier in the season, keeping tabs on the game over the weekend. I know it was Minnesota, but he's looked really good, and he could go back last year to when Ohio State played at Penn State, and TreVeyon kind of finished the game off with a 32-yard run. Yeah, you could see that again this weekend, I think, against Michigan. He's playing that well right now.
Yeah, I see it low scoring. I know you do, and I have not been all that impressed with Michigan's quarterback. I don't even think he played that well. I think against Maryland, down in College Park. Looking forward to seeing that game, Johnny. Looking forward to seeing you at Ford Field. You're going there twice. I'm a little jealous of that, but
I might just camp out. I might just stay there. I might just go to the Lions-Packers game, and then find a nice ramp up to the top section and just sleep there until Friday night.
All right, guys, we will be back at some point to recap next week to recap what we saw from Penn State, Michigan State, what we actually learned about Ohio State and Michigan. We could talk about some other things as Penn State's search was really going to, I think, intensify, I would imagine, for the next OC once the regular season concludes. But all signs point to Penn State winning a 10th game in the regular season, finishing 10-2 in the regular season for the second consecutive year. And then we're going to learn where they're going to go in the bowl game in about 2 weeks, Johnny. Have safe travels to Detroit. I'll see you at some point. I'm looking forward to getting to Ford Field. And Penn State fans, if you're going to go if you're going to go to Detroit for this game. Hey, keep an eye out for Johnny and I, Joe Hermit. We're all going to be out there. Looking forward to it as Penn State goes for win number 10.